to the first question. The format for this debate is most of these questions are for all three of our GBA president and vice president candidates. A couple of them will just be for our president candidates, and I think there's at least one that's just for our vice president candidate. Each person will have 90 seconds to respond. They don't have to use all of their time. And the order for each question, it's going to be up on the screen. For each question, it's randomized using random.org. All right. First question, starting with Vijay. What diversity areas do you think TEPR can still improve on, and how do you plan on continuing to improve diversity at TEPR?
Yeah, thank you, Penny, for that question. I think in general, TEPR tries to promote the sense of diversity, especially in their recruiting process. I remember, especially coming to Diversity Weekend, I think the whole point of that weekend was to encourage diversity amongst many different spectrums, race or sexual orientation. But one thing I think the pandemic has really hindered is our ability for allyship. In a lot of ways, allyship is supplementary to some of the main sort of initiatives in diversity. And it's a lot more difficult to do that in a virtual setting. It's a lot more organic and maybe a little bit more approachable when it's in-person events. But I think I'd like to improve on the allyship, both in terms of the racial groups that we have and the sexual orientation and just any type of group. I'd like to promote ideals that would bolster allyship and help promote the causes that we want to see in a diverse community.
All right, Bazyl.
Thanks, Penny, for this question. One thing that I'd like to think about here in terms of improving diversity at TEPR is that interconnection between our affinity orgs. So I know that I, for example, have never been to a LABC or a BBA event, and I'm wondering, why is that? How can we have our student organizations work more closely together to develop events that not just appeal to their core demographic, but appeal to others? And I'm talking about events beyond ABA's massive, all of our affinity orgs event that happened a few months ago. But what kind of targeted events can we hold with our affinity orgs to improve that sense of comradeship, I'm saying?
Thank you for the great question, Penny. I'd like to also thank my two classmates who are here on the virtual stage with me, and everyone who's watching from home. This is great. You know, I'd like to talk about this from the perspective of someone who, frankly, doesn't fit into any of the categories that have traditionally been for diversity candidates. I really want to promote allyship and promote people who, you know, maybe don't feel like you necessarily are invited to any of these particular events to, you know, show up, show your support. And I feel strongly that I want to go to as many diversity oriented events as possible to show support and to learn more about what other people in our class are experiencing. And I would encourage everyone across the class to go to as many things as possible.
Excellent. Thanks all for your responses. Next question. This is for all of you again, starting with Adam. The TEPR program is known for its prowess in tech, but how will you help TEPR continue to make itself a top tier and well-rounded MBA program?
Thanks, Penny. I agree that the TEPR is well known for tech. I'm actually not recruiting for tech at all. And I think that one of the ways we can really stay well-rounded is that in addition to focusing on our robust data analytics curriculum and knowing all about the tech industries, we can focus on other industries too. I've been involved in the Media and Entertainment Club, and Like, it hasn't always been tech oriented, but we've done a great job of promoting awareness of media companies. And I additionally think that we should work to promote student engagement with the ALC as much as possible. I think that it's a great way for us to stay well-rounded.
Thanks, Adam. In thinking about how Tepper is not purely focused on tech, I mean, I'm similar to Adam. I'm also recruiting for consulting, and that was what I was focused on when I came here, not tech. So it's very interesting to me that Tepper is considered a tech program still. But what I'd focus on here is recruitment of more non-traditional backgrounds. So I, for example, was in the public sector before I came in. I'm going into consulting. That non-traditional background will not only result in kind of a wider breadth of career paths that we'll choose, but also improve that diversity of our class and spark new debate and new conversations.
Thank you, Bazyl. Kind of piggybacking off of Bazyl's point, I do think having some more non-traditional backgrounds enter the program would be beneficial to everybody in the program. But in a sense, we're a tech MBA, or that's how we're known across the MBA universe. But 10 years from now, 20 years from now, every single aspect of business will have some piece of tech integration in it. So us having the status as a tech school really elevates us to forward-looking students in the MBA experience. And I think one of the downsides of the type of people, the type of MBA graduates that come from this school, is that there's a perception that CMU grads are too technical and too focused on maybe the analytical side and the data side of things. I'd like to promote better ways of ALC integration, similar to what Adam said. I've used Accelerate many times already, and they're fantastic at pinpointing like things that make you more approachable, more personable, and not just one-on-one connections, but understanding more of the soft skills that are necessary to succeed in the business world. So on top of our current prowess in tech, if we can integrate more leadership and Accelerate type activities, I think we would really stand out, and it would position us very well into the coming years.
Great, thank you so much. I'm gonna jump over to our first live question. All right. So that's a little bit too big to fit in here, but the first person to respond to this question will be Adam. What are actions and plans you believe the GBA and the Tepper community at large can do to help increase Tepper's yield among admitted students, specifically for the incoming class of 2023?
That's a great question. And I think that the biggest thing that we can do to try and increase yield is be as open and accessible to incoming first-year students as possible. I know that a big part of my decision to come to Tepper was based off of the interactions that I had through recruitment events. I know that when I came to tour, I actually met some of the current second years because I toured a little bit earlier and had really positive interactions with them. And I had really positive interactions with the students who were there at the time and are now alumni. And the open and welcoming environment really made me think that if I came here, that this would be a place that I could meet people, I could work in a collaborative place and thrive. And I think that by having a positive approach towards our class, interacting with incoming first-year students, we can continue to foster that to have a strong yield in the upcoming class.
Thanks, Adam. It's going to be difficult with the pandemic specifically to do a lot of things that traditionally have been done to maybe woo some of the candidates, accepted candidates. one of the things that really helped me seal a position to come here was a coffee chat that I did back when I was still applying in the winter, and it was in Washington, D.C. And having those opportunities to just meet with students really helped me seal the deal and know, like, this is where I want to go. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we may not have the opportunity to do that as readily or as accessibly as we used to. So I think if we can have more volunteers from our MBA class, like, be able to do virtual meetups, and that'll be a lot easier for people to do rather than come into a city and meet with people. It would just give the new students just a taste of kind of what's going on and the types of people and the types of students that already exist here. And I think, unfortunately, all the other schools are doing that as well, but our class has a lot of diversity within it, and we can use that to basically show the type of culture that exists here at Tepper with these virtual type of coffee chat events.
Great, thank you so much. The next,
Penny.
Did I miss you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Bazyl.
All right. Thanks, Vijay. You've hit a lot of points that I'm also thinking about in terms of how to increase our yield. So one of the key things that factored into my decision to come to Tepper was similarly chatting with current students and chatting with alums. But when I went to my original recruiting events, to my MBA fairs, I actually only got to meet a AdCom member. I only met John Ivey. So in the current situation, it's really difficult for us to have students attend those MBA fairs. But is there a way that we can have virtual attendance to those MBA fairs so that prospective students can immediately connect with a Tepper to get a better sense of what life is like at Tepper? We talk a lot about the community here at Tepper, and so let's showcase that community to prospective students. One thing that I was thinking about here is how can we continue our virtual tours? Are we having students sit in our virtual classes? I know there was a rumor that someone had been sitting in on finance class earlier this week, I believe, but can we have more people attend? And with Zoom, we're no longer restricted to just 1 or 2 people being able to sit at the spare desks. We can have as many people attend and watch and see how Teppers interact with one another and interact with the subject matter.
This next question is just for our president candidates. You get a break, Adam. How is your approach? I'm not muted. Okay, I'm not muted. Sorry, a lot of moving things in front of me right now. How is your approach to the Tepper response to COVID different from the current CMU guidance, and how will you implement change?
Thanks for the question, Penny. So one of the key things that I talk about is moving into a proactive long-term solution for COVID. Right now, we're in a situation where we're reacting to things that are going on. If we have an outbreak, we need to sequester. If we have a large outbreak, we may need to just close the school. I'm sure you heard about HBS today and Columbia having to, I believe it was discipline was the word, 70 of their students because of outbreaks. So instead of thinking about reaction, I want to talk about proaction. How can we make plans for the future for when new testing capabilities are available and mass vaccination is available? What can we do in the lead up to those in order to enable us to connect, to engage with one another in person without masks, without social distancing sooner? In terms of implementing this change, I recognize that the GBA doesn't have the power to force this to change. Instead, as your GBA president, I will be pushing the university, pushing Tepper, and in support of your voice. I know that we all want to spend time in person. The restrictions are very restrictive. So only with the power of your voice can I come to Tepper and say, the entire class says we need to make changes. How can you make changes?
Thanks, Bazyl. I wouldn't necessarily say my approach to the COVID response is different than CMU's. After speaking with Kate Bearclaw, I've come to realize that she herself had to jump through a lot of hoops to get us and the experience that we want, separate from the university as a whole. What I can say though, that I can contribute to in the coming months is really communication. At the end of the day, like, there are some overarching high-level decisions that are out of our hands. And I'm not gonna pretend like I know what the right decisions are. But properly communicating that with students and knowing what the limitations of what we can do is very important. I think it's sometimes that when those decisions are made, it's not properly communicated to the student body. For example, at the beginning of Mini 1, many students weren't attending, or they weren't coming into the Tepper building because the guidance on where they can go was a little bit confused. After realizing that, we talked to Wendy Herman, and we put up posters around the rooms so that there are clear instructions that the people who are allowed in there and the capacity. And we also sent out messages through WhatsApp just to make sure that people are aware that these kinds of things are available and we can still come into the Tepper building, but do so in a safe manner. So ultimately it comes down to communication and making sure that the information is properly communicated to the students.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Got our next live question. That is way too big for you to read. COVID has made recruiting a very fluid process. This is all context here. Assuming that virtual recruiting won't necessarily go away post-vaccine, could you detail some ways that you might be able to streamline the remote recruiting process for the class of 2023? Starting with Adam.
I think that the best way that we can streamline a virtual recruiting process for the class of 2023 is to, really be there to help them to help guide their way through it. I know that this has been an unprecedented challenge for a lot of us to be on these Zoom calls with either recruiters or alumni. And, myself, I've made some blunders on these calls. They haven't always gone super smoothly, but, I've learned some lessons. For one thing, I've learned that, speak clearly. And if you are going to have headphones on, make sure that you actually put them on instead of just plugging them in. I made that mistake. Just share these bits of wisdom to the class of 2023 so that they don't make a fool out of themselves like I did. That's my plan.
Yeah, so thinking about streamlining that remote recruiting process, we all know that Zoom burnout is a serious concern for all of us. I know Vijay's talked about instituting breaks in classes and making that mandatory. So I'm wondering, can we move recruiting prep up? Something that was mentioned in a TCC seminar that happened over the weekend is that consulting prep for us started relatively late compared to some other schools. So I'm wondering, how can we work with companies as well to be more understanding of the situation that we as students are in? Something that actually happened today was that on a phone call with Kearney, they mentioned that all schools have a due date of December 3rd, but Kellogg has a due date of December 6th and Columbia has a due date of December 10th. Is that something that these schools worked out because of their COVID situation? How can we as Teppers work out a similar deal with these companies? Opening that up, taking off that stress of collapsing all of your recruiting and recruiting prep efforts into just 2, maybe 3 months, opening that up and allowing for more breathing room, I think is a really effective way that our students can have better recruiting success next year.
Thank you, Adam and Bazyl, for those responses. I think that if hopefully, if things kind of return to normal and maybe we can do a little bit more in-person recruiting, this experience we've had so far of recruiting virtually may benefit the incoming class, because not only does it make it more flexible to the schedule and the schedule of the recruiters, but it also provides them a little bit of insight on how virtual meetings or virtual workplace could work. And some of the things I've realized is through the recruiting process is that depending on the industry you're going into, it's a very specific recruiting style. And consulting, you know, for example, they focus on casing. IB, they have a completely different process. But since we're all still in this virtual world, I think that the MCC could potentially have sessions on like common Zoom etiquette or Zoom normalities. For example, looking at the camera instead of looking down at yourself, and making sure like the lighting is right, making sure that your camera isn't like this looking at you, you know? These are small things, but a lot of us didn't realize that going into this experience, and it may have detracted from our ability to recruit well with the company. So these are the things that I would like to see normalized next year for 2023.
Great. We have another live question that I'm going to jump over to, starting with you, Vijay. Many of us have not met you in person or even spoken with you. How are you going to ensure that you speak for all students in your GBA role, especially students whose identity differs from yours?
Yeah, this is a difficult task, I think. I from the day I started my MBA program, which goes back to even before Basecamp, I made an effort to try to meet as many people as possible. And that included like joining Slack and organizing virtual meetups before Basecamp. And then during Basecamp, trying to meet people through like clubs and trying to cast a wide net. Despite how much effort I put into that, it's impossible to meet every single person. But one thing I will say though is that we're only 6 weeks into Mini 2. We still have a lot of time to meet each other. And unfortunately, the pandemic does make it so these organic experiences aren't as common. But if we continue to try to see each other in ways, whether virtual or in-person mask, like I will continue to try to reach out and attend club events to try to meet as many people as possible. One initiative that the academic committee is working on right now is switching up the sections for next Mini so that you can interact with the new set of students that you didn't in the past 2 Minis. And this will make a big difference because we haven't seen some people live simply due to the sections that we're in. So that kind of interaction will be facilitated through classes, but also just organically through club events and through time.
Thanks for that, Vijay. In terms of, as your GBA president, how would I best be able to listen to you? I like to maintain an open door policy in general. As you know, I'm very active on the WhatsApp group to the point that I'm sure people are a little bit annoyed by my constant memeing, but I want to create an environment that is friendly, that allows people to come to me and say, you know, Bazyl, I'm having this problem. I want this fixed. If they're uncomfortable with that, my GBA will continue the trend of surveys. I know a lot of the junior board members are sending out surveys on how we can better develop our academic situation right now, for example. And another thing that I'm thinking about here is WhatsApp and Slack. We use WhatsApp and Slack both as channels, but because we don't have a clear delineation, a clear decision from the university on whether or not they're going to pay for Slack, which I've heard is a still ongoing fight, even for the rest of the university. Maybe we want to focus just on WhatsApp, on creating a kind of a online forum that allows people to converse with one another freely, which is the way that it's sort of working right now. But I want to have clear channels. So that way people can approach me, people can approach Adam, people can approach Vijay, and make sure that their voices are being heard by their GBA. Adam?
I just want to start off by saying that it is a tragedy that I have not met each and every one of you. I really want to get to know everybody. And my solution to this is that my calendar, I keep it up to date 100% of the time. If I'm not scheduled for something, all of you have free reign to put something on my calendar and we'll do something. And, you know, generally speaking, you can choose. We can talk about furniture decorating. I love this chair that I got. It's awesome. In a lot of my free time that I'm not spending devoted to Tepper-oriented things is spent playing Call of Duty Warzone. So maybe you want to play Call of Duty Warzone with me. But if you want to do something else, I'm particularly interested in learning about what it is all of the other Tepper students like to do for fun. I mean, I have to spend all day with myself. So why would I want to learn more about the things that I like? Like, I want to learn about the people who have identities that are different than me. So please, like, if I haven't met you yet, reach out to me, put something on my calendar. We'll do something. It'll be awesome.
Careful what you wish for there, Adam.
Anytime.
Speaking of awesome, someone submitted a fun question that we're going to work on next. Starting with Adam, if you could be a dinosaur, which dinosaur would you be and why?
This is an easy question. I would definitely be Brachiosaurus. And I've thought about this a lot. And the biggest reason for this, there are two of them. One, I'm not particularly tall, and the Brachiosaurus is very tall. So I think it'd be cool to like walk around seeing like what it's like to be tall. And two, the Brachiosaurus breathes through the top of its head. So it can go to the very bottom of a very deep lake and see everything that's down there and then still be able to breathe, which sounds awesome. So you're basically like a giant dinosaur whale all in once, which would be awesome.
I guess I would have to say that I would be Ankylosaurus. As you know, I am quite honestly sometimes hard to approach. I am a little bit spiny, and let's be honest, I'll live with that. But I also want to make sure that I have that club tail to hit off any of those wandering pit students who might be trying to get me sick with COVID.
My answer isn't as metaphorical as Bazyl's, but the dinosaur that I would like to be is called the Quetzalcoatlus. I can't really pronounce that, but basically it's the biggest bird dinosaur. Just imagine a giant pterodactyl. I mean, they dominate the skies. They're like, the wingspan is huge and you can just see everything. And I think just being able to, you know, be the king of the sky means you're the king of the world. So it's an easy choice for me.
All right, thanks for the great answers, y'all. Up next, another question for all of you. What ideas do you have for improving the online experience for the rest of this year? Starting with you, Bazyl.
Thanks, Penny. So in terms of improving the online experience, I've talked about improving the online academic experience. I've talked about creating a new Zoom curriculum that students and professors can develop together to create kind of a list of standards that professors can say, I'm going to choose to do this. I won't be able to do this. So I know we had certain concerns with Falah's videos this year, 2 hours every Sunday, or if certain people, not naming any names, Monday before 9:50 a.m. and then the quiz. But we have the same videos with finance right now, and they are working out. Is this something that we can have in our other classes to provide asynchronous learning opportunities? At the same time, thinking socially, Zoom burnout again. Zoom burnout is one of the biggest things that we are facing in terms of low turnout for our events. So can we have Zoom light events? In person is probably not possible right now. It's snowing today. And I'm not sure how many of us want to go out and sit outside in the snow, but we had, ABA, for example, had a really successful mentor-mentee coffee in Shenley Park back in September. Can we have similar events, socially distanced, out in the open? And finally, other Zoom Lite events. So I know Among Us has become really popular, but I've seen events run for Saba, ABA, Partners ran it a few weeks ago, and I'm sure, and having played it with others on the second years, I'm sure there's some private games that are going on as well. So let's take advantage of that. Let's play with each other. That didn't come out right. Let's play Among Us with each other and, step away from that Zoom. And thanks, Penny.
Yeah, I think a lot of the success that comes with the online program comes with the preparation of the material, specifically the asynchronous material. I think with the classes that have that asynchronous material, especially like finance with the videos or econ, they provide the students an opportunity to learn the concepts ahead of time so that the class is really more discussion and practice based. And I think that's really important. A lot of us, especially non-technical backgrounds that come into this program, seem overwhelmed with the materials presented in class and the speed at which it goes. But if there's time beforehand to really understand the concepts and have videos posted ahead of time, that would provide a great opportunity for students not only to learn the material themselves, but to go at a pace that they're comfortable with, and then eventually engage in the class in a very lucrative way that is beneficial to not just themselves, but the whole class. Additionally, the way that information is displayed on Canvas is extremely important. Canvas has become streamlined more so now in the way that the topics are broken out by week, but some classes do a better job of others of actually detailing out like how the class is going to go. Shout out to Telmer, for example, his Canvas page is amazing. If we can have that kind of detail in other Canvas pages, I think it would be really great so that students can know what topics are going to be covered and how it's going to be covered during the class.
I think that one way that we can improve the online experience for the rest of this year is to really lean into the fact that we're going to be online. And one idea that I have is to have a weekly Zoom background competition, where if you think that you've come up with the best Zoom background for the week, submit it and we vote. And I think that this could be a lot of fun and that it'll encourage creativity. And I know that there are a lot of great graphical designers in our class, and I hope that people come up with really great Zoom backgrounds that are entertaining. And I think it's a great way for us to use those tech skills that we've acquired here to have some fun with the online experience for the rest of the year.
Thank you so much, all of you, for the great responses. This next question, just for the president candidates. How do you plan to create a productive dialogue with the administration and students? In particular, building a relationship with our new dean. Starting with you, Bazyl.
Thanks, Penny. In terms of creating that productive dialogue with admin and especially our new dean, I'm sure many of you know that I am a rabble rouser. I like to cause trouble and, make trouble. And the thing is, coming into this role as GBA president, the biggest thing that I need to do is listen, not just to the students, but to administration. Vijay mentioned earlier that admin had made some really hard decisions in regards to our COVID policy. Admin has a voice in this beyond the fact that they are the controlling power, but still admin should be listened to. How can we make admin's case to the student body? But at the same time, how can the dean, the new dean especially, come to better understand the community that we TEPers have built? It's a community that we have built. It may be somewhat gatekept by AdCom, by admin, but at the same time, it's our community. It's our community that needs to be continued. And I want to make sure that admin and the new dean understand how that community exists here at TEPR and how they can continue it into the future. Vijay?
Thanks, Bazyl. That's really great points. With the administration, I think the most important thing, and especially with the new dean, is really just having more events to show their face to the student body. We had a fireside chat with the new dean a few weeks ago, and that was really great for a lot of us to really meet the new dean for the first time and understand where she's trying to take this school, at least in terms of direction. having more of those kinds of events, I think, will be really important to not only create more exposure to the administration, but also just make the relationship a little bit more casual and a little bit more comfortable. Secondly, as GBA and as GBA president, that's kind of my main responsibility, right? It's connecting the student body with the administration. So really, if any kind of grievances or comments or anything that come through us get passed on to administration. But kind of closing that loop with the events, as I was mentioning, like the fireside chats, it'll just create a more community where openness is encouraged and having dialogue is encouraged.
Thanks, gentlemen. I'm going to jump down to a live question. And this is, I think, we're probably now closed for new questions, y'all. Gosh, I'm having so much fun. Let me see, here we go. The class of 22 has experienced a virtual experience, whereas the previous institutional in-person experiences will disappear once the class of 2021 graduates. How will you effectively recreate the in-person MBA experience without that institutional knowledge? Starting with you, Bazyl.
Thanks, Penny. So I've mentioned previously in my speech that institutional knowledge will be gone at the end of this school year. So in order to continue it, I'm talking about strengthening our alumni relations. Our alums are the ones who have had that in-person interview experience, that in-person Trek experience. Making sure that our alums continue to stay engaged with Tepper not only allows us to call on their experience, but also allows them to maintain a stronger tie to the Tepper community. It strengthens their connection for their future careers. So in terms of recreating that in-person MBA experience, I can't say that I would be able to call on my own experience. We're going to have to look back, look at what has worked in the past, and see how we can adapt that to the future. Things that have worked online, maybe we can continue those virtual beers alongside regular beers. Maybe we can have Among Us again as another key online event that we have relatively often, or Adam's weekly Zoom background competition. So I don't see necessarily that we're going to recreate that in-person experience. Instead, we're going to create a new mixed in-person and virtual experience that will benefit not only the full-time program, but potentially the part-time program as well. Vijay?
Thanks, Bazyl. I think once everything's cleared up and we can have in-person events again, we're all going to just be itching to go to as many in-person events as possible. It's kind of like this build-up, and everyone, I think there's going to be a huge turnout for a lot of events. So I don't necessarily think that the institutional knowledge will disappear. One, because, well, the administration, they've been through this many times and they kind of carry that institutional knowledge. But two, we're not the only ones coming out of this experience of quarantining. The whole world is. And we're coming together into the new in-person and coming back into live reality in a sense. So we're not doing anything different than what anyone else would be doing. I think once we definitely have to reach out to our alumni and see like how we can recapture the experiences that existed. But doing so, I don't think will be difficult because all of us are just so starved for interaction that this will be like a huge bonus for all of us. I mean, we're seriously so starved for interaction that doing homework together at Tepper feels like the highlight of the week. I don't think it's going to be hard to get turnout anywhere after this pandemic is over. And as far as like recruiting and stuff, those things will come back naturally because the MBA program was built on that. It'll be easy for MCC to start doing, live interviews or accelerate to do the live in person. I think it'll be easier than we expect it to be.
I think this is a particularly difficult question to address. I know that things have really changed for our class and our experience has been sort of fundamentally different than the experience for classes before us. I think that as a GBA, we can work together with current second-year students and alumni to try and catalog what institutional experience Tepper students have traditionally had. But I do think that there is going to be some kind of evolution to the experiences that the Tepper students have. And I think that that is something that naturally has occurred over time at Tepper. I don't think that it's very likely that the experiences that they were having 20 or 25 years ago are the same experiences that were happening 5 years ago. It's possible that this singular COVID experience accelerates that evolution, but I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case. I'm sure it will be different to some extent, but I think that as a GBA, we can work with second years who went through a large portion of the first year experience and alumni who are out there who I'm sure will be eager to help us to make sure that the Tepper experience is as similar to it as how it had been before. But I do think there will be some changes. I think that that's just the nature of the situation.
Thanks to all three of you. Going back to the questions that came in before the session. What will you do to advocate for underrepresented minorities and the LGBT+ community? What will you do to encourage more students who identify in this way to be in future Tepper classes? Starting with you, Bazyl.
Sorry, Penny. Thank you so much. So in terms of advocating for those underrepresented minorities and the LGBTQ+ community, something I spoke about earlier is connecting those organizations with one another to build solidarity, but at the same time, putting those organizations front and center in terms of our recruiting efforts. So Tepper is not just a place where you can come to get your tech degree, where you get your ops degree. It's a place where we celebrate, where we revel in the diversity. That diversity is what's creating our strong community here at Tepper. And we want to drive that. We want to drive that. We want to drive that recruitment effort in incorporating more of those underrepresented communities. So putting those organizations, putting those clubs front and center, allowing them to have more airtime, allows more people to see them. That visibility allows them to connect to those orgs and say, hey, I want to go to Tepper. They view me as important, compared to another school where a large community may not be able to say, well, we're gonna pay most attention to this group. Here at Tepper, we have that opportunity.
I think the best way that I can advocate for underrepresented minorities and the LGBT+ community, sorry, I'm misreading, is to really show up to as many events as possible and to encourage all of our classmates to show up to as many events as possible. We're one big family here at Tepper, and you gotta show up for each other, and you gotta be there for each other. And I think that by having a welcoming and supporting attitude towards everyone, that we can all thrive together. And I think that that's the best thing that I can do to support these communities.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Adam and Bazyl said. We here as a community are very open, and any kind of discrimination to LGBTQ+ is just unacceptable here. So we have an open space here, and I think part of the way that we can incentivize more incoming students of LGBTQ identification to come to Tepper is to really promote allyship. And I know I mentioned this before, but I think a lot of the times when potentially recruiters, or even here at Tepper, when they're recruiting for maybe that specific demographic, they tend to focus on the amount of the representation that currently exists, but maybe not so much about the allyship around it. And creating that kind of safe space is extremely important. So it's not just that I'm going into my group, but like I'm welcome here in every single group that comes to Tepper. Really encouraging that in recruiting events is extremely important. And I would implore everyone here to be an ally in any way possible.
Okay, next question, starting with Adam. Do you feel that you've made a conscious effort to connect with all the students in Tepper and present yourself as approachable?
I would like to think that I have made an effort to appear approachable. I have made efforts to connect with students at Tepper, but as was brought up earlier, there are people here that I have not met. And you know, I had the experience of switching small sections just last week for our corporate strategy class, and I was dumbfounded to find that there were people in the class who I didn't know were in our class at all. And this was kind of shocking to me. And I think that this is an area that I could improve on, that really all of us could improve on, to like really try and get out there and connect with our classmates. And I plan to work more to do this. If you're out there and we haven't met, I'm sorry. And I really want to get to know you. But that being said, I think that if you approach me, I 100%, I'm down to talk about anything you want. You know, we can do lots of fun things. So this is something that I think I have a possible area of improvement, and like hopefully I'm confident this will go really well as the semester and year goes on.
Yeah, I personally believe that I have made a strong effort to try to reach out to as many people as possible, given the circumstances that we're in. As I mentioned, I try to at least join one event for every single club, just to meet people, even if it's just for one time. Continuing to do that, I think, is what I will, or the way that I will meet the rest of you. I tend to think that I make myself approachable. If I don't, I apologize, and I'm giving you permission now. Approach me whenever you'd like, or through email or Slack or WhatsApp, anything. I am eager to hear from every single one of you.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about being approachable, I'll be honest, I talked about being an ankylosaurus. I'm kind of spiny. It's really hard to talk to me. But especially in Mini 2, now that I've been attending in-person classes, I've made that conscious effort to be less kind of grumpy, let's be honest, to be less grumpy, to be friendlier, to be open to hearing how my classmates are trying to deal with this Zoom life, and to provide some levity and advice of my own to them. So in the sense that, have I made a conscious effort? Yes. Have I connected with everyone? No. And that's on me. I want to meet everyone, just like Adam said. I want to get to know all of you better, not just for this sense of, oh, we're all here at Tepper, we need to connect for career purposes. I want to get to know you because you're my friends. You know, Adam and Vijay, both of them, I've had the chance to work with both of them on case competitions. And in terms of upcoming case competitions, I try to work with people I've never worked with before. I want to work with new people. So again, just like Vijay and Adam said, if I haven't met you, feel free to reach out to me, Slack, WhatsApp, feel free to send me memes. I definitely appreciate memes.
We are coming up at the end. I've got 2 questions left for you. This one is, I think this is the same order that we just had, starting with you, Adam. What changes, if any, would you propose to the GBA's mission statement?
You know, I'm actually somewhat embarrassed here. I don't actually know what GBA's mission statement is. And that is That's embarrassing for me personally. I honestly don't know. And I think that is, you know, an opportunity for me to learn more, and that, you know, I am just one voice. I'm going to be just one voice of many on the GBA, and that I think that that we can work together to change it. But I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for this one.
In the interest of fairness, I think I've just put it up there. I can't tab away because of the way that I'm set up here, but this is the GBA mission statement.
I mean, in the interest of fairness, I think that it's a strong statement, and that, you know, as one voice of many on the GBA, I think that it can be about, I can help evaluate it, but just looking at it now for the first time, I don't feel I have sufficient knowledge of it to make a recommendation here.
I think the GBA mission statement right now is fantastic. One thing I would add is to create a fun and memorable experience. I think that's the one thing that's maybe missing from this mission statement. We focus a lot about our professional development, the diversity we're trying to reach, and, you know, the accessibility. But ultimately, like, my goal is to make this experience the best one possible that we can have. And through the GBA, I think we have an opportunity to do that, to connect everyone and connect all the clubs, but really just work on this together and have fun and, like, make this a really memorable experience for all of us.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's hard to disagree with that, Vijay. I mean, as an outsider, it's really hard to consider how precisely I would change the GBA. Looking at the GBA's mission statement, the GBA's mission statement is really strong, talking about student success, service leadership, a diverse environment, and transparency and accessibility. It's really hard to disagree with that. It's hard to say that any of those should be changed or that really anything should be added. Instead of changing that mission statement, I want to focus on its application. I think that's where the GBA can make its biggest impact, in how it applies that mission statement to our school life, to our student environment, to our learning environment, excuse me. And that application is where I see my ability to make the biggest impact, not in necessarily changing the GBA's role, changing the GBA's mission, but how it makes that impact on all of your academic careers here at Tepper.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those responses. I've got one more live question that looks like a priority. Looks like I'm being asked to ask it.
Uh-oh.
There are 200 people in the second year class. And aside from y'all, I think there's 137 people in the first year class. Why should we elect you? Starting with you, Vijay.
Well, I think that your experience isn't over yet. A lot of second years, many of you have job offers from even last year, but many of you have finished recruiting so far. There's still 2 whole minis left for you all, and we want to, as first years, we really want to continue to meet you all. And unfortunately, the pandemic has made that more difficult, but I think that we have an opportunity, because we as first years really are so eager to meet you all, that we want to create more interactions and create more dialogue between the two of us. And hopefully, you know, no one can say, but if COVID does end up kind of tampering off and we can have a little bit of in-person, perhaps we can, you know, have our spring ball, or, you know, towards the end of the school year, we can have like more social events. I think trying to at least trying to have these types of events is really important. And, you know, your experience, you guys are still here as students. So at least on the academic priority, I'd like to think that all of the changes that I'm proposing, or that I would like to implement, would also apply to the second years, not just the first years.
Yeah, I would say that in terms of my candidacy is focused on plans for the future. You should vote for me. You should elect me because I'm looking ahead. I'm not necessarily focused on what's happening right now, because COVID is putting a damper on any plans that we can make. Instead, I'm looking ahead towards what we can be doing in the future. As second years, it's really hard for me to say, we're definitely going to be having events for you. We're definitely going to be able to allow you to travel in March and all the normal things that you'd be able to do. But in terms of driving alumni connections, I want to support you. And for the first years, it's a very similar reason, because you want leadership to see you through what I consider the darkest time in Tepper's entire 60, 70-year history. What do we need to be doing? We need to be moving ahead towards the future. And if you elect me, it's because you care about Tepper. It's because you care about the future of Tepper, not just because of perhaps saying, I want to have a strong ROI on my Tepper degree. It's because this place is part of your life. This place is part of your career. The 2 years we all spend here will be the 2 most important years of our entire lives. Well, maybe except for that year where you were teething and learning how to walk. But you're going to vote for me because you want to see Tepper survive, succeed, and thrive. Adam?
I think there are 2 main reasons that you should vote for me. The first of which is that I'm a candidate that you can trust. When I don't know the answer to something, I'll tell you. And I'm happy to reach out to other people to get more guidance about things. And I'm not going to try and sell you on something that I don't know is really the best option. I'm gonna, tell it to you the way it is. And when I don't know, I'm gonna say. And the other reason to vote for me is that I wholeheartedly value the input of other people. I come into this knowing that I have a lot of limitations and that, I don't know everything. And I'm really going to rely on the rest of the GBA to really provide great input here that I can help them to get their goals accomplished, and that I really value the input of other people. And I think that these are the 2 reasons that you should vote for me. Thank you.
Okay, we have just enough time to squeeze in one last question. I realize it's right at the hour. This is explicitly for you, Vijay and Bazyl. It relates to things that you both brought up during your speech last night. And starting with you, Vijay, what does it mean to be the voice of the MBA class?
To be the voice of the MBA class, that really just means hearing your grievances and your comments, conveying that to administration, and implementing changes that can, achievable changes that can help create a better experience. Oftentimes we feel like, we're in a vacuum and maybe I'm only feeling this problem. But oftentimes, it's not the case that you're the only one feeling it. Many people are feeling it. And, as a GBA body, we hear comments from everyone. When we aggregate those comments, we kind of see what everyone is thinking. And when everyone's thinking the same kind of things, those are the things that we need to bring up to the administration and have things, make changes to implement. So being the voice, I'm not saying that every single thing that you all think needs to be changed is going to change. But the major things that you all are feeling, the major grievances you all are feeling, those will be represented by the GBA and by me as president to the administration. And I will make sure that if the issue is strong enough, we will demand the attention of administration to actually implement those changes.
Yeah, Vijay said a lot of things that I would echo. So in my role as the voice of the MBA class, I see it as 3 key items. One is listening to you to make the biggest impact on as many of your academic careers here at Tepper as possible. The second is fighting for your interests with the loudest possible voice, supported not only by Adam, and the GBA, but supported by all of your voices, to admin, to CMU. And finally, it's to drive the long-term change that all of us want to see here at Tepper. Changes to our student environment, changes to our class, our community that we've built. What are the things that all of you want to see change in the next, not just 1 year, but throughout the next decade? You know, as your voice, I'm going to inform next year's class, next year's president, how we did things in 2021, how they may want to consider doing things in 2022. And in that sense, that's those 3 items: listening, fighting, and driving, I see as my role as the voice of the MBA class.
Excellent. Thank you so much, all 3 of you. This has been a great debate. I really enjoyed listening to all of you. And thanks to all of you who came and watched. I'm going to stop the recording now.